can go and get some very well-earned coffee, and we will be back here at 11:20. Okay, thank you very much. And there are some excellent presentations after the break, so don't disappear. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, good. Went well. Do we get the music? Do I threaten to sing again like I did? You see, you missed me singing earlier on, but you'll have to watch the video highlights to get that. You didn't turn up at 9 o'clock. Yep. And it's really good to see so many people for the final session of the TETRA World Congress. I guarantee you will not be disappointed with our final speakers. Let's move straight into the first presentation, which is quite a serious affair, I believe, from what I've been speaking to the next speakers about the topic that's about to come up. It will be a joint presentation between Martin Benke, who is Head of Operations of Airwave Solutions UK, and he will be joined by Peter Goulding, who you may know. He is an ex-Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police and is currently involved in strategy for Motorola Solutions. So we'll move along quickly, and I'll hand you over to Mart.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As it says up there, my name is Martin Benke. I'm the Director at Airwave, responsible for the network operations, responsible for providing the service to our UK customers. I'm joined on stage by Peter Goulding, who obviously needs no introduction, known to many people here at the conference. I've worked with Peter for several years now. First of all, Peter was my customer. Now Peter is working for Motorola, so a supplier. I'll leave it to you to work out which is the best relationship to have with Peter. Peter is your customer or Peter is your supplier. Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. I want to take you back to a Thursday. It was on the 4th of August. The weather was grey, it was overcast. We are in north-east London. It was at this point a tragedy occurred. There was perhaps one shot, maybe it was two. Some people said there may even have been three. It was right by a park. There were a number of children there. It was unfortunate. Mark Duggan died. He was shot by some Metropolitan Police officers. It went into an inquiry, as you can imagine. We had an incident a few years ago in the G20, can you remember? Mr. Ian Tomlinson, collapsed. The Metropolitan Police made a statement that he had died of natural causes. There is now an inquest and an officer is in front of the judicial inquiries because video was revealed that he was actually hit and kicked and pushed by an officer. Therefore, at this time on a Thursday, the Metropolitan Police made no real statement. That was part of the agreement. It should be dealt with by an independent group. The Saturday occurred and disaster happened. We will go into the details, but the UK suffered perhaps its worst riots for many, many years. It swept right across the UK, apart from Scotland, probably because nobody ever wants to steal anything from Scotland. It was mainly criminal damage, over 4,000 offences just in London. This is 166 arsons. That's criminal burning of shops and houses and business properties. Over the people who have been arrested, over 4,000 were arrested. 3,000 were arrested within about the first week, 10 days. Is that right, Sam? Quite quickly. Many of those are convicted. 70% of them had previous convictions. 55% were from the black ethnic communities of London and the United Kingdom. It is an area that will still be studied by criminologists. But what we want to focus on today was, let's hear how Airwave was and is prepared for these events.
Thank you, Peter. So, let me tell you a little bit about the Airwave network. Let me tell you a little bit about Airwave customers to give you some idea how Airwave is prepared to deal with such things as Peter has just briefly described. I'll start off by explaining about the network. The Airwave network was built over a period of about 5 years, rolled out in 5 years, and we finished the build in 2005. We actually connected our first customer in 2001. Now, some people sometimes get confused about networks. If you speak to Mr. Vodafone or Mr. Orange, they will claim to have 99% coverage within the UK. They have 99% coverage, but they cover 99% of the population. The Airwave network covers 99% of the geography of England, Scotland and Wales. So the Airwave network goes to places that the commercial operators don't. This is achieved with about 3,800 base stations, and of those 3,800 base stations, approximately 1/3 of them are what we call high resilient base stations. These high resilient base stations have duplicated transmission, so they have 2 transmission paths to them. These high resilience base stations also have resilient power. They have power autonomy for 7 days, so for a complete week they can survive without mains power. Very high availability possible from these sites because they have resilient power and they have resilient transmission. They also have resilient radio. Every one of those base stations has at least 2 base radios. So those base stations have also the capacity to deal with the failure of a base radio. So 1/3 of the base stations, high availability, and those base stations provide vehicle coverage across all the major roads, major city centres and major airports of London. So in the event of a catastrophic failure of the main supply, we still have basic coverage available from those high availability base stations. The network also has unsurpassed levels of resilience in terms of the switch network. We operate a network which has 8 main operating switches. Every one of those switches has its own standby, what we call cluster hot standby. And that standby switch can take over almost instantaneously in the unlikely event, as I say when you get on the aeroplane, in the unlikely event that the switch is not available. In the unlikely event that the switch is not available, the specification says within 8 minutes the standby switch must be operational. We use those standby switches on a regular basis because that's one of the ways that we upgrade the network. We upgrade the standby, switch over to the standby, upgrade the main, and then switch back again. And I know that typically it takes 1.5 minutes to switch over from main to standby or vice versa. So we have unsurpassed levels of resilience in terms of our switch network. We also have 2 network management centres. So we share the load of managing the network between these 2 network management centres. And in the event that one is not operable because of a flood, because of a fire, we can manage the whole network from the other network management centre. So we have a very resilient, a very reliable network. This is a network which is designed for mission-critical communications. It is resilient, it is reliable, and it is secure with authentication and encryption. Excuse me. How do we operate this network? I've got just over 400 people in my team, and they look after the network. They look after the network from a field engineering perspective, from a radio planning perspective. They manage the capacity on the network. I divide the operations into 2, Scotland and north of England, Wales and south of England. And obviously, it's a 24 by 7, 365-day a year operation. We take second and third line support from our vendors, one of our vendors represented here today, and at the risk of stating the obvious, the network is obviously provided by Motorola. Presently at release 7.1.1. This is a release created specifically for Airwave, which has additional features in it which provide extra capacity. Extra capacity, which means we can have 10 BRs on a single site. Extra capacity, which means we can support more than 2,000, almost 2,500 users on a single base site. Extra capacity, which means we can have 64,000 talk groups on the network. And these features certainly prove their worth as we moved into the riots. The biggest base station we have on the network is actually, we have several examples of base stations, sectorized base stations, which have 10 BRs on each sector, so 30 base radios on a single site. A little bit about our customers. We serve all the police forces across England and Wales. For the police forces, we provide secure coverage. Police are responsible for providing their terminals. Police are responsible for providing the control room equipment. Ambulance. We provide a managed end-to-end service for our ambulance customers. We look after the terminals in the ambulances. We look after the equipment in the control rooms. Fire, again, a managed end-to-end service. Motorola are the vendor who provide the terminals for our fire customers. We provide a secure, resilient infrastructure and look after the equipment in the control rooms. Police, fire and ambulance are obviously our major customers. Police came live on the network First Force 2001. We're now live with every police force, every ambulance trust, every fire and rescue service. In total, there are about 300,000 users on the Airwave network. It was reported here on Tuesday there's about 3 million TETRA users worldwide. That means 1 in 10 TETRA users takes advantage of the Airwave network and the Airwave service. At this point, I'll hand over to Peter, and Peter's going to explain how the situation built up with the riots.
So we had this terrible incident on a Thursday, but actually nothing happened on the Friday. It was quiet. It was a normal day in London across the UK. On a Saturday, people wanted to protest. They wanted to make a statement to the police. And in the local area, a small little town called Haringey, they marched to the station. We predicted 70, maybe 100 people, and they turned up. Again, nothing happened at 5 o'clock. But by 8:30, some of the scenes you see here